If you're playing to not lose, if you're like, oh my God, this is the hottest girl I met all week, I don't want to ruin it with her, you're basically just, you've already lost. You've already failed if that's your mentality. All the clubs that you can't get into unless you spend a bunch of money and know a name and all this kind of stuff, the really hot girls are going to those clubs because they can, because some other guy is inviting them to them, or because they show up at the door and they're hot and the bouncer just says, okay, come in, you're good for the club, etc. Okay? That is the case. That's the life they're leading. To a certain extent, when you walk up to them, they're automatically thinking, oh, this is the next guy, right? And that kind of sucks. It does. It's not the greatest position to be in. And here's the thing, as long as you are playing the game where the rules are that the hottest club you can get into or how you physically look is the source of your value, you are going to lose with those girls. Because they automatically, just by like waking up and doing their makeup, beat you. They just did. Right? Now, if you become a celebrity, or you were saying like they want to date football players and stuff like that, right? You become a celebrity, you become a star athlete, something like that, maybe you win that game, that pure value game. But for the most of us, that's not going to happen. However, very fortunately, we do not have to play that game. We can play a different game, okay? In the conversation, we do not have to be in awe of the fact that she's beautiful. We can find it comical that she never went to college. Or we can find it silly that she doesn't understand certain things that we talk about. Or we can convey that, yes, she's beautiful, but there are lots of beautiful women. We want the beautiful woman who we actually interact well with and we like her personality, and is she going to be that woman? So first of all, again, if the game is you're so pretty, you're so pretty, you're so pretty, not so much, right? But if the game is that you value intelligence, now are you going to win against most girls? Probably, right? Yeah. So test them on that. Challenge them on that. Right? You can tease them about it, first of all. You can drop in stuff like early on, you'd be like you're very cute, but you seem sort of ditzy, something like that. Or I don't know if there's a British word for ditzy, but whatever the heck your version of that is. That works. Ditzy works. All right, whatever. But if you convey something of that attitude of, yes, you're pretty, but you haven't won me over yet, or you caught my eye, now are you going to capture my mind, right, or my heart? You ask a girl like that, like something like, well, what's the last book you read? And all of a sudden she's like, and she's backtracking, right? Because she knows on some level she probably should have read something, but she hasn't needed to or she hasn't, and now she's the one that's less than for you, or she's the one that's not hitting your standards rather than you being the one not hitting her standards. It is about having the standard, right? It is about setting the standard, having the standard, what you're playing. Also, by the way, you say, is this of value to a girl? It sounds to me like you're talking about what you do is you work with how people think, right? How people think, how people like navigate the world with their brains. Yeah. Does she have, well, hopefully she does. Does she have a brain to navigate the world with? Is she navigating the world with a brain? Yeah. Yeah, she is, right? So you can teach her stuff about that. You can teach her stuff about herself, right? It's kind of pseudo-cheesy, but very effective. If you happen to know interesting little quirky things about psychology, interesting little things about like how people will react to certain things, and you can put the girl in that scenario and predict her reaction, or you can put the girl in the scenario where she's surprised by her own reaction or she's surprised by the outcome of it, and it's like you knew her better than she knew herself, that's a huge demonstration of value. That's an incredible demonstration of value, right? Even beyond specifics, like obviously you being smart is great. You having this specific degree is great. Right? Even beyond that, let's say you weren't smart. Let's say you didn't have this specific degree. Yeah. Regardless of anything else, you've lived 20 or 30 years on this planet, or 18 years on this planet in some cases, but you've lived almost 2 decades to much more than 2 decades for all you guys on this planet. You've had a unique life experience, okay? That is experience that girl is never going to have. She is never going to be through the things in life you've been through. If you can convey those things that are new to her, that are interesting to her, that are different to her, that capture her imagination in some way, that is also value. And it doesn't have to necessarily have a tangible outcome, right? If you go watch a movie, do you come out of that movie a better person and like more likely to succeed than you were going into the movie? Not necessarily. Maybe in some cases, maybe. But in many cases, no. But you were entertained. You were captivated. You had an experience with that movie. And that, in and of itself, made your life better, at least for that period of time that you were experiencing it, right? So at a very bare minimum, even if you don't have tangible things to offer, you can offer a woman an experience, right? and it's a very good experience. The experience of meeting someone of the opposite sex and having a connection and having tension and feeling physically good is a pretty awesome experience, right? And it's actually kind of better for women even than it is for men, right? It's an incredible, incredible experience. So you always have that to offer. You also always have your own personal experience, which you'll never have to offer. And then on top of that, each and every one of you have some awesome things in your experience, right? Just those of you I know, like I know you have some awesome shit going on in your life. Sounds like you have some pretty cool stuff. I know you have awesome stuff going on in your life, right? The rest of you, I don't know you very well, but I'm sure you do. I'm absolutely sure there are things you have that are unique and cool to you and different than the girl's going to experience, right? But the question is, what's going to be cool, right? If, for example, you do DJing, right? Even if you don't do it in clubs or whatever, you do DJing. Do you know music relatively well? Cool. So is knowing music cool?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Do you know music better than her? Yeah. You're cooler than her. Look what I just did there, right? You can do that too, right? You can tease her on, do you even know this songwriter or whatever? Or do you even know this kind of music, right? Absolutely. Or she has taste in music, like, oh my God, like I can't even take you out anymore. Right? I'll have to educate you. Right? You can take that frame, right? And at the very least, even if that frame is not accepted, the fact that you're introducing that frame, the fact that you're challenging her with that frame is already a start because it gets it off her pedestal. And this is where I come full circle to the Magic School Bus, which I kind of talked about. So the idea of the Magic School Bus is the idea that girls are having gifts and lifestyle thrown at them everywhere, right? Guys are just, hey, do you want to fly to Dubai? Hey, do you want to fly to Tokyo? Hey, do you want to go for a $500 dinner? They are having that thrown at them. But on a fundamental level, they kind of know they didn't earn it. And on another level, they're kind of just tired of it, right? It's like if you took a child and you just spoiled him, you just gave him everything. Just give him every toy he wants, him or her. Give them every experience they want, let them eat candy all the time, etc. At a certain point, they aren't happy. At a certain point, they're just like, they want more and more and more and more and more, and it's not actually, they're not finding any meaning in it. And probably with eating the candy all the time, they feel sick a lot. It's not an overall good experience, right? And what that child really needs is someone to give it discipline and purpose in its life, right? And so you need to kind of knock her out of that world of having all this superficial shit thrown at her and make her actually deliver in some way, make her actually come to play, make her actually step up in some way that is meaningful, right? So challenging the girl is really huge, especially these girls that are used to getting everything. You challenge them, and now all of a sudden, maybe they shit test you back and forth. Maybe you have a little bit of tension. Maybe a little bit of competition over the frame. But at least you introduced a frame that had a chance to challenge them. At least you introduced something that knocked them out of this dazed existence they're in and made them sit up and think about, oh shit, this guy's different. Oh shit, this guy requires some of my attention. Does that make sense? And that's a big part of dealing with the hot girls as well. If you automatically fall into their frame, there's no challenge. If you challenge their frame, you may lose. You may fail the shit test. They may have a stronger frame than you, at least until you get good at holding your frame, etc. But at least you pierced their frame and got a genuine reaction from them instead of just getting the hot girl blasé and move along. Technically, the last thing with dealing with the hottest girls is this idea of leveling, okay? And the idea of leveling is basically that there are certain things you're communicating about yourself even when you don't think you're communicating them, right? If you're dressed in a way that's not particularly fashionable, you are conveying to the girl something about your past history or something about the people you hang out with or something about your sense of fashion or something about the places you go. You're conveying something about yourself, right? It's an honest signal. You didn't do it on purpose. There's something accidental that you did. If a girl asks you what your favorite food is and you say hamburgers, right? I mean, there may be some context in which that can actually be good if she already knows you're sophisticated and stuff like that. But if you say hamburgers and she thinks that's just because like the only thing you've ever had is fast food and you've never had good food in your life, you've never eaten in a nice restaurant, that's leveling. It's not helping you. In New York, I had a student talking to a girl and she asked what his favorite nightclub in New York was. And he said, Brass Monkey, right? Now, Brass Monkey it's a lovely club in New York. But it is not at all exclusive. Like if you have a pulse, you can go in. A pulse and an ID, you can go into Brass Monkey, right? And there are lots of clubs in New York where you actually have to like know somebody to get in, or like you have to be somebody to get in, or they at least look at you at the door, and if you don't look the right way, they won't let you in, or you have to bring girls to get in or something like that, right? And so for a lot of girls, if your favorite nightclub in New York is Brass Monkey, what that's really saying is, I've never been to any of those actually good clubs. And for a girl who, we talked about this earlier, is getting invited to those clubs like as though it's nothing, suddenly she's like, oh, this guy's beneath the level of the guys I'm normally getting invited to the clubs with, right? And so you just leveled yourself, right? And that can be a factor as well when you start talking about these more high-end girls. So the more social experience you get and the more you sort of are around popular people, the more you are around successful people, the more you learn what is traditionally considered high value, you can avoid these sort of leveling potholes, right? And none of these things are actually wrong, right? There's not anything, to be fair, actually wrong with preferring a bar that you can just walk into anytime and have a good time, as opposed to a bar where you have to know the bouncer and go through some bullshit or bring some girls or whatever. There's actually nothing wrong with that, right? But if you were a celebrity, that other bar would also be easy for you to get into, and that's more likely where you'd end up going. So this is actually why game works. It's a beautiful thing. But when girls make decisions about guys that they just met, they're deciding a very big thing on very limited information. And so when you give them specifically bad information, when you give them an honest signal of a negative, they are automatically going to think, this guy's not all that, right? And then that's a very hard impression to undo, because you unintentionally gave them a negative and you're trying to intentionally give them a positive. People trust a lot more what's unintentional than what's intentional, right? If you have an agenda behind saying something, people don't tend to trust it. If you have no agenda, it's by accident, they tend to trust it. So that's the other thing you might be doing, is leveling, right? So in short, if you're having trouble with getting hotter girls, what is it? What is it likely? Either you're, one, not challenging their frame, right, and you're not getting on their radar. Two, you're possibly being too reactive to them and ruining your chances. Or three, you're possibly leveling yourself. So I'd have to go into like very deep depth with you to tell you your exact combination or cocktail of those things. Yeah. But I'm guessing there's some combination of those three things that's present in your game, which is why you're doing well with 7s and not so much with 9s and 10s. Mm-hmm. So those are the three areas I'd at least look at. If you treat a 10 emotionally differently than you treat a 7, you are not going to sleep with a lot of 10s. Okay? You have to be as willing to walk away as you are with a less attractive girl, or at least somewhat willing to walk away. In general, in any relationship, the second you can't walk away, you're done. Right? It's going to be a bad relationship at best, probably no relationship. But you need to emotionally be willing to do that. You also need to emotionally be ready to challenge them. Right? If you're talking to a girl who's a 10, and it's nice and pleasant and positive, but not sexually charged, what's your instinct? Is your instinct, oh my God, this is going well, I better not mess it up? If that's the case, you're not going to sleep with that 10. Okay? If your instinct is, this is going well, but it's not sexually charged, how do I actually turn this into something? What is the risk I need to take to turn this like good situation into an effective winning situation? If that's your mentality, then you're going to do well. Right? But if you're playing to not lose, if you're like, oh my God, this is the hottest girl I met all week, I don't want to ruin it with her, you are basically just, you've already lost. You've already failed if that's your mentality.